what I'm trying to focus on here is a compliment to what my colleague said. So I want to walk through these quickly and just give you a sense of what I think are important things that we could be doing. The first one is bringing a sense of urgency to this. It is striking to me, and I'm talking to a reporter about this last week over a piece that's going to be coming out. It's striking that Michigan doesn't behave like we have a sense of urgency about this issue This issue matters. I go into other states where that's not true. I go into other states where you see leaders across sectors, business leaders, governors, heads of post-secondary systems, other media leaders, making the issue a matter of high visibility, sustained concern, setting big goals. We've got governors who are setting major goals for educational attainment. They're rearranging investments to make it a priority. And we've got legislative involvement in some of those states that's significant. We don't have any kind of alignment of that interest here. We talk about it in pieces. We talk about it once in a while. We don't talk about it as an everyday, are we moving this issue or not? The Lumina Foundation, as an example, which spends its entire investment in working on how schools improve, how learning improves, and how we get greater educational attainment at all levels from doing that. They've set a clear goal. Their whole practice is about how do we get to 60% of the population of the U.S. having a post-secondary credential by the year 2025. It's a very large goal. They publish data about what's going on in every state. They encourage a range of policies and practices. They've got about 30 states that are working against using their goal as a framing device for what they're doing. Michigan isn't one of them. But it's comparable to their goal is comparable to the level that we're talking about needing in Michigan based on the research. If you want to say, okay, how would we increase educational attainment in Michigan? There's a bunch of things that can be done, and these are being done in places around the country, and they're frankly being worked on by cohorts within Michigan. There's individual pieces going on at different institutions, different communities, but we don't really have a statewide sort of strategy or coalition around this. You can focus on people who have got some credits but don't have a degree yet. There's a whole range of people that are halfway to a degree or 2/3 of the way to a degree. You can focus on, really reaching them and niching things to help them finish. There's initiatives doing that. You can take the people that we've talked about that have very low basic skills and focus how you accelerate, how they actually get done with adult education, and don't just get a GED, but actually move on to a university or community college and get post-secondary attainment or a training program. You can focus on retraining for working adults and how people keep learning while they work and connected. And I'll talk about something that was tried in Michigan in the last few years on that I think points the way. You can target those that are having the greatest challenges. We're partners with groups that are focused on Hispanic attainment increases, for example, a very difficult population. And so that you can have strategies that are aimed at certain target groups of need as well. Second thing beyond just focusing on increasing educational attainment and in support of that is we need to help people figure out what their choices are around all of this. We have terrible counseling and advising systems today. The software, at one point, every institution had some people doing this. As budget cuts have gone on, what's going on in terms of things that have been pared back at colleges, at high schools, and the one-stop centers that the Michigan Works agencies run, and community colleges, you name it. There have been reductions in advisors, there have been reductions in time for people to do counseling and advising, because it's a peripheral business to the core that goes on in every one of those institutions. So we don't have much infrastructure for it in terms of people today. If you look at the internet, the upside of the internet, lots of information is available. The downside is there's lots of noise. If you're trying to figure out something about a career or a job, all you put in something like career planning or job training or something, and you get millions of listings. And so, how do you figure out what ones to actually trust? What ones actually give you good information if you're trying to look for a job or figure out what's education to get and how it would tie to a career? It's also very hard to navigate all of that in a world that keeps changing quickly. And what's in one place may well be obsolete because at the speed of change going on, something's changed pretty quick. What we're arguing is we need to really think about a high-tech, high-touch combination where we have really good portals, and MEDC is doing some work to start going in that direction. I think a lot more can be done to really have really good access to good, reliable information across a range of sources that's understandable, and you can test the validity of it. You can see how whether users found it to be valuable or not. And that's widely available and easy, well-publicized, easy to understand. At the same time, we need to build up a cadre of people, and I think this could well be people that work across a whole range of places so that they're not just institution bound. Maybe you can find them in libraries, maybe you find them by appointment, maybe you can, they're available tied to classes and things, but who really are skilled at this, who really work this. We're missing that in the state. One of the things about workforce development we've learned in recent years is that when you organize it around employers, it works better than when you organize it without them. There is a whole frame of working at the level of working with the industry sector or cluster level, and which simply means work with a bunch of companies to work together that are in the same industry to figure out what their problems are and figure out solutions. There are great partnerships. There's a bunch of them going on around the state. Some of them were started in the Granholm administration under the term Regional Skills Alliances. MEDC's doing cluster teams today in a number of areas, and there's a range of groups on the ground in communities around the state that are bringing 10, 15 employers together for regular meetings with them and the educators to really say, what's going on in our needs that are common across us? How do we meet those needs? Whether they're needs for hiring, whether they're needs for training, whether they're looking at trends that are coming about retirements, other issues, and how to really make sure that needs are met. It's an efficient and effective way to work. There have been national evaluations of the model that basically say it both increases the wages for people that go through programs that are designed out of these partnerships, and employers that are involved say that basically they get better productivity, they get turnover goes down, they have less rework, better quality, and these are really, frankly, fairly cheap infrastructure to run. There's no big bureaucracy with them. It's do you have a partnership that meets regularly and talks? We heard a lot from the previous two presenters about the term innovation, and I want to bring that to the issue of learning. You can't get to big numbers if you don't change the modalities of how we deliver this stuff. We need to get beyond things being offered in academic semesters only, and really looking at more of saying, oh, to an adult who's lost their job, well, okay, it's October. We'll see you in January when the next semester starts, which has happened in too many training programs. But rather say, okay, what can we do next week? How do we arrange? How do we figure out the right things to be flexible? Or when a company has a need, how do we move that? There's a range of ways to change how we do deliver learning with online learning, contextual learning, other pieces. We need to embrace this as a cultural thing. Michigan was a place where we've given lip service to lifelong learning, but we kind of said, well, we were glad we were done with it when we were 22. We need to really focus about sort of how this is the way people keep pace and to celebrate it as a state and be proud of it. We got to operate faster. One of the things that's striking about most public programs, and workforce programs are no exception, is that they work in like 5-year planning cycles, and it's a big deal to make a policy change once a year. The companies that they're working with are working in days and weeks, not 5-year plans. They laugh when you talk about 5-year plans today. And if you look at GM, just to take one quick example, before the reorganization and GM now, about what's the speed of getting a product to market, what's the speed of changing if something isn't hitting, it's a totally different company than it was. Well, the new GM is reflecting what the world is working like now. 20 years ago, Microsoft was a company that was basically emerging out of somebody's dorm room. Today, it is struggling to maintain dominance in just a very 20, 30 years. It's moving through a whole cycle and having to revisit itself. There are ways to do that. There are examples out there in the workforce and education world to do it. The last point I want to make, and it reinforces Charlie's last point, is we have made a tragic level of disinvestment. I know all the reasons we made it. I know just how bad the budget has been and the unprecedented scale of the pain of the issues going on. Years ago, I worked for an appropriations committee, so I totally understand what you go through with this. But we've got to find a way to reprioritize in the state to be able to invest in adult learning and post-secondary learning for all. If we don't invest in it, we're not going to be a state with a leading economy. We've got to do this at a scalable level. And this has got to be at the level of race to the moon kinds of stuff, where we're really committed to it. Charlie named every governor since George Romney. Every one of them has said this was a goal at some point in time. Every one of them has formed at least one blue ribbon commission on this. I can find the studies in my office. We've got to get beyond that level and talk about sustained action. The final example of can you do this at a scale? The biggest thing that Governor Granholm tried in this space was called No Worker Left Behind. It was basically pooling together money across a bunch of federal programs with a little bit of general fund money 1 year to offer up to 2 years of free tuition to people who would get a post-secondary education with a credential at the end of it that would be an occupation an employer demanded. They enrolled 160,000 people in that in the 3 years of bundling the money. Without doing any major marketing, they could have had more. They had waiting lists as the money started to tighten up. There is I give that story not to argue the detail of the program. I think it was a really interesting initiative. What was interesting to me about it was a scalable initiative. It was something that the demand was huge. That when this offer was put out there, 160,000 workers out of those several 100,000 unemployed that we talked about earlier said, yeah, I'm willing to take the chance to go back to school to help change my life and help get a new career. So I think the people of Michigan are ready to do this if we figure out the right levers and tools to offer to do it. So Mitch, I will stop there and we can move to the rest.